This is one of the worst natural disasters in U.S. history. A catastrophic Category 5 hurricane tore through the Gulf Coast. It was so powerful that it completely changed the coastline and killed over 1,800 people. So, what's the biggest threat to the U.S. today? The infrastructure or the economy? Well, this is Hurricane Katrina, and this is America underwater. It all started when a tropical wave emerged off the west coast of Africa. But at first, no one really thought much of it. It was just another tropical depression. That would change once it hit the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico. It began to rapidly strengthen, and by August 24, 2005, it had become the infamous Hurricane Katrina. On the morning of August, Katrina made landfall near Borås, Louisiana, with maximum sustained winds of 125 miles per hour. As it moved inland, the storm surge from Lake Pontchartrain began to flow into New Orleans, flooding the city. Unfortunately, these levees were already weakened by a recent tropical storm. They weren't built to withstand both a hurricane and a storm surge, and within hours New Orleans was underwater. This map shows the extent of the flooding. It even flooded areas outside of the city limits, like the town of Slidell. At this point, tens of thousands of people were trapped, stranded, and desperately waiting for rescue. But there was a big problem. New Orleans was designed to be a walkable city. In fact, most of it is below sea level and has canals instead of streets. So rescue vehicles like trucks and ambulances couldn't reach those in need. Some residents even had to flee to their rooftops because the floodwaters were just too high. It was a race against time as residents waited for the floodwaters to recede. If they stayed too long, the floodwaters could have pushed their houses off their foundations and swept them away. At least 1,500 people drowned, many of whom never even made it out of their homes. But this is where the situation gets really messed up. After making landfall in Louisiana, Katrina continued on a path of destruction up along the Mississippi coast, causing billions of dollars in damages. This includes destroyed homes, businesses, hospitals, and even oil rigs. The total damage from Katrina is estimated to be around $125 billion, which is why it's considered the costliest disaster in U.S. history. After the storm, people began to return to the Gulf Coast only to find their homes destroyed and their whole neighborhoods completely wiped off the map. What's crazy is that the waterline was actually lower than during Hurricane Betsy in 1965. So why did Katrina cause so much more damage? Well, it's because of something called a storm surge. You see, as the storm got closer, the wind speed increased dramatically and the ocean literally started piling up on the beaches. As the waves crashed ashore, they pushed seawater further and further inland. This is known as a storm surge, and it can cause devastating coastal flooding. In fact, a study found that the storm surge from Hurricane Katrina was the highest ever recorded in the continental United States. It was so bad that it actually reshaped the coastline. Here's an aerial view of the devastation. In some places, entire neighborhoods were completely obliterated. In the aftermath, the focus was on rescuing those in need, providing medical care, and most importantly, delivering food and clean drinking water. Sadly, many residents were forced to wait days for help to arrive. Even though most of the city was underwater, helicopters were still dropping food and water to stranded residents. Eventually, the floodwaters receded enough for rescue boats to reach the stranded residents. But unfortunately, not everyone was rescued in time. In total, 13,000 people died due to Hurricane Katrina. Most of them drowned, but others died from carbon monoxide poisoning after using generators indoors. Others had to make the desperate choice between evacuating before the storm hit or staying behind and hoping for the best. Some people even reported that their insurance companies denied their claims, leaving them with no money for food, water, or even medicine. Thousands of residents were forced to abandon their homes and live in shelters while others struggled to return to a life that was completely turned upside down. Now, do you think you could survive a disaster like this? First, you need a plan. Knowing what to do before, during, and after a disaster can save your life. You should also consider getting a FEMA grant. Grants are free money that can help you recover from a disaster, but they can take a long time to process. So, if you want to be prepared, you might want to look into other options like a personal loan. Personal loans are great because they come from private lenders who typically don't ask many questions. You can get approved even with bad credit, and they usually deposit the funds directly into your bank account. They offer fast and flexible loans, meaning you can get the money you need quickly and use it however you want. They can even help cover unexpected expenses like home repairs after a disaster. For example, let's say your house got damaged and you needed to repair the roof, replace appliances, or even remove debris. With a loan from a reputable lender, you can get the funds you need to restore your home after a disaster like a flood or hurricane. One of the best things about hard money loans is that they are not subject to the same regulations as traditional mortgages. This means that borrowers who may not qualify for a traditional loan can still get the money they need. Hard money lenders also typically have a deep understanding of local real estate values and market conditions. This means that borrowers can often secure loans for properties that are in poor condition or need extensive repairs. Another benefit of hard money loans is that they allow borrowers to borrow a lump sum of money and repay it over a predetermined period of time. This can be helpful for borrowers who need to complete multiple repairs or make significant changes to a property. Another type of loan that can be helpful after disaster is a bridge loan. Bridge loans are short-term loans that can help borrowers purchase a new property while they wait for their existing property to sell. This can be especially helpful after a disaster when a borrower's existing property has been damaged or destroyed and they need to relocate. So, do you remember the people who were stranded on their rooftops? Well, we have a lot to thank the National Guard for because they were the ones who saved many of those people. The National Guard is a reserve military force that's called upon in times of national emergency. When Hurricane Katrina hit, thousands of National Guard members were activated to help with the rescue and relief efforts. They used helicopters to airlift stranded residents to safety and boats to rescue those who were trapped in their homes. They also helped distribute food and supplies to those in need and assisted with search and rescue operations in the aftermath of the storm. Without the help of the National Guard, the situation in New Orleans could have been even worse. As the sun began to set each day, many of the stranded residents lost hope of being rescued. But the National Guard worked tirelessly to save as many people as possible. They faced dangerous conditions, including high winds, heavy rain, and debris-filled waters, but they didn't give up. One of the most iconic images from the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina is that of the Superdome. The Superdome was supposed to be a safe haven for those fleeing the storm, but it quickly became overcrowded and unsanitary. The National Guard was eventually called in to restore order and provide security. They also helped evacuate those who had chosen to stay in the stadium and ensure that everyone was accounted for. The National Guard's role in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina was crucial. They provided essential support that helped to save lives and restore order. Their quick reactions and dedication to helping others in need are truly admirable. So, what was the biggest threat to the U.S. after Hurricane Katrina? Was it the infrastructure or the economy? Well, it was actually both. Over 1 million people were left without power, and the floodwaters caused billions of dollars in damage to homes and businesses. But the economic impact went far beyond the immediate aftermath. The tourism industry in the Gulf Coast region was devastated, and it took years for it to recover. Many people who had lived in the affected areas for generations were forced to move away. And the mental health impacts of the disaster continue to be felt by many today. If you want to learn more about Hurricane Katrina, check out the video in the description. And if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like as it really helps us grow. Thanks for watching.